Hisense Mini-LED ULED battle at 65 inches. The brand new U8N versus last year's champ, the U8K. Up next.
I've seen things you people wouldn't believe.
Hey, what's up guys? I'm Brian. This is Tech Therapy. Thank you so much for joining me as we compare the Hisense U8N ULED Quantum Dot Mini-LED versus last year's U8K ULED Mini-LED, also Quantum Dot, 65 inches versus 65 inches. The U8K was one of the most popular TVs in the entire industry last year, going all the way up to 100 inches, and the U8N improves on it in every single way. What's interesting in this comparison on camera is even though the U8N is a good deal brighter at 65 inches, it doesn't always appear that way due to the superior local dimming. But without further ado, let's check out the U8N ULED Mini-LED versus last year's U8K. Thank you so much for watching. All right, guys, let's do it. Let's check the design and build quality of the Hisense U8N versus the U8K. New backlit remote. Everything about the Hisense U8N is much more high-end. Build quality, center stand, speaker placement. As we go over to the Hisense U8N's last year's backlit remote, more simplistic design, two legs can be spread far out wide or more narrow. Little Hisense logo there at the bottom, slightly better than last year's U7K in terms of design. Moving to the back of both TVs, the smooth finish and protruding speakers of the U8K with the subwoofer in the middle, where it's more jagged and better shaped U8N. Detachable cable on both. Center stand is very nice. Two positions on the center stand, easy to put on. It does add to the weight of the TV in comparison to the U8K. However, they're both full array mini LED quantum dot. They are heavy. Again, protruding speakers there. Back of the U8K, you have your 4 HDMI, 2 HDMI 2.1 capable of 144 Hertz. However, one of those, HDMI 3, is the eARC, where on the U8N, the HDMI's 2.1 144 Hertz are not eARC. They are now moved to a separate HDMI. That way you don't lose that HDMI port for eARC. Great that they added that, a big plus if you're worried about using those ports, one of them for eARC. Again, smoother back on the U8K, that jagged, meaty back of the U8N. Again, U8N is very heavy because of that center stand, very sturdy. Again, two positions. The outward legs of the U8K did get a little flimsy over time. More minimalist in terms of a bezel. Bezel feels smaller on the U8N. And the Hisense logo is so small, it's actually on the bottom left. You can't even really see it in this shot. Now the U8N is in its lowest position. You see that little Hisense logo there, which is visible. It was visible on last year's U7K as well. Not a big fan of that, and they are learning to be more elegant and more minimalist as far as their design. There's a center stand, and I'm trying to find that logo for you. And the bezel, can't even find it. That's the design of the Hisense U8N versus the Hisense U8K. Big improvement in terms of build quality and that eARC placement, much needed improvement as well. Now, in terms of picture quality, the U8N is on the right, U8K is on the left. We are going to match them. The way I'm showing you where I'm going to match standard in HDR, I'm going to do for every single preset on the TV. Match them up as well as I can. They are the same manufacturer, so it's very easy to do that. The only real difference you're going to see a couple different places where the settings are placed and the presets are placed in different areas in terms of sports and games. But what is here in all modes is dynamic color enhancer. And we're going to enable that later on and show you that in a particular demo and in gaming. Something you may miss. Now, what isn't always visible in these shots, and I can tell you I see it right here, is the depth. If you look at the trees to the side of the rainbow, you can see more depth on the U8N. It is a brighter TV. We were at 65 inches. I cannot speak to the other sizes, everyone, as I only have the 65-inch to go by. But for me, in nearly every shot, the U8K and the U8N are very different. Even if the U8K seems brighter in certain shots, it's almost a full screen brightness that lacks detail. The U8N for me is much more colorful in most of these shots and has more depth. Now, as you saw me match them, whatever has local dimming on high, they're all on high actually. If there's an advanced contrast enabled, it's enabled on both. The color temperatures are matched. For the first few presets, we're actually going to be in standard. I will jump into Filmmaker here and there. I'm not a huge fan of it on these TVs, though the U8N's Filmmaker, again, is much improved. Going through what you see here in terms of the image, let me know in the comments what you actually see as far as depth and color. The U8K was again one of the most popular TVs last year. It was their flagship for the beginning of the year. Then there was the release of the scarce UX, which I also reviewed. This year, the U8N has the U9N above it and then the UX. However, for most purposes, the U8N is the everyday flagship in terms of what you're going to see out there in the wild. Again, look at the richness of the U8N in terms of color. Even though the color temperatures are the same, the color gamut, all that is the same. We have native happening, we have auto happening, whatever the preset calls for. Later on, you'll see native because we'll show you Dolby Vision with Spears and Munsell. But these match up very well in terms of the presets, so it was actually pretty easy to match them. And for me, even shots like you're seeing here where the U8K appears brighter, it lacks the depth of the U8N. And there's just more detail. Hisense is definitely upping their game in as far as processing. Seeing them and speaking to them at CES, it was all about processing. Not just brighter, but useful brightness. Now, staying in these punchy presets is to show you flexibility of image, especially in this next demo you see here. It's one of the best local dimming algorithms or abilities of any TV I've ever seen. The U8K was great as well, but the U8N is brighter with better local dimming. It doesn't crush shadow detail at all, even though it is aggressive in terms of its blooming capabilities, keeping that blooming down. Quickly jumping into SDR and staying within standard preset. Now, why I like to use standard in a lot of these shots is it's punchy, it's aggressive, but you can't hide anything with the local dimming between vivid and standard. And neither one of these TVs actually need that. They don't need Filmmaker mode or any of the more accurate presets to hide any blooming. These transitions are very fast. You see here, even though the U8K is brighter in that shot, the detail is kind of lost. Also in SDR, there is no loss of brightness in any of the presets other than Energy Saver, which just behaves differently on the U8N. Moving into another local dimming demo. This one, we do have it on Theater. HDR Theater, in fact. And even though it is a more accurate preset, there is still advanced contrast on medium out of the box, so I matched them. Local dimming is on high. Color temperatures are the same. Now, for me, what makes the local dimming better on the U8N is because you can see on the side of that bottle it is brighter where it needs to be. Shadow detail is there, where on the U8K, it can be a little more erratic, especially in real content. Moving into my favorite black bar demo, special thank you to good friend Jennifer Gala and her second channel, HDR Super Channel, for all her amazing work. Everything you saw in the intro and a lot of these demos are Jen's. Check the description below for all of her amazing work. Consider becoming a Patreon to Jen's channel. Here we're going to be in Filmmaker and also in Theater. Now, I do feel like the Filmmaker mode was very drab on the U8K. It has improved on the U8N. It's still brighter in Filmmaker mode, still has a bit of punch where it is a little lifeless for me on the U8K. I tend to not wander into Filmmaker mode on Hisense TVs in general. Now, moving into those of you that love vivid, how bright can the image look? And they do look different here in many shots. Now, as far as recommending the U8K over the U8N, I would only do that halfway through the video in terms of money saving, value only. There's no instance where I would choose it over it just to do that. It would have to be for value reasons. Now, this next transition I'm going to leave on vivid. I'm going to leave the camera the way it is, simply because there's no blooming. Even with the camera exposure high, and even though it's clipping, still more detail on the U8N, and there is no blooming whatsoever on either one of them. Especially this shot here. Both of these again are from Jen. You'll see me change the settings on the fly. The exposure remains the same. Probably one of the hardest local dimming videos that she has. Now, why do I keep these punchy presets on during these kinds of demos? Is one, I want to highlight the versatility of both TVs. Going into Filmmaker and making TVs look exactly the same is not something that I do. I will jump into these more accurate presets. You'll see me do Dolby Vision later in the video. But being able to show you what you can do at home and what you're free to do with your TV, I fully believe from all the manufacturers that their presets are their separate signatures. They're there for a reason, and the processing that is taken away in Filmmaker mode, it does have its purpose in the other presets. You can see the pure white on the U8N. And for this difficult shot and the shot before that, we are back in standard HDR. We only had one SDR demo playing. Screen uniformity is also excellent on this U8N. This is 65 inches. Now, in this next scene, I like to change the presets on the fly, simply because it's a very saturated image. Beautiful demo material, beautiful content, but being able to show you on the fly the different presets as you're seeing Energy Saver behave correctly on the U8N. Now, there are moments here where the gaming and sports are flipped in between. We're not really focusing on those. But as you see me move to the same similar presets, you can see how accurate the image can be. Now, the U8K, again, is excellent. If you have the TV, there's no reason to upgrade unless you're going up in size. Only reason why I would ever choose the U8K over the U8N is, again, tremendous value, or you're getting a much larger size. Same series here in terms of demo, moving around the different presets. Now, what you'll see here in this Lion demo is that the U8K is having a hard time not being overly saturated. We saw this last year when the U8K went against the X90L. You couldn't get the U8K to look as accurate unless you were in filmmaker mode. It kind of kept that saturated look, where you can see the versatility of the U8N in every preset. It can look cooler, it can look a little paler, it can look more realistic. But to me, these are helpful to go through each preset. Simply because if you look at these videos with one preset and you're not a fan of it when you get it home, you have to know there's some headroom, there's some ability to change the image to your liking, especially if you're in a bright room or a dark room. Last segment, going through the presets. Again, a very saturated image. Watch how the U8N can match the saturation, but then going through each preset can become more accurate, where the U8K kind of remains saturated regardless of what you do. Now again, the U8K is excellent, but there is more clarity on the U8N, more detail and more depth. The U8K's value from last year was off the charts, especially when it got to 100 inches, but it was one of the most recommended TVs last year among all TVs. What Hisense is doing with the U9N and the UX last year was phenomenal. And that darkness you see with energy saving is actually it behaving correctly, where the U8K's energy saving kind of stays the same. Moving into our next demo, we are going to stay in Vivid for this one. Fire Dancers is a very challenging demo. I'd rarely do this one on Vivid, but you can also see while the local dimming is better on the U8N, there's also more shadow detail. Even in the ceiling, there is more visible. Now we should have the U7N soon. The U7N will go against the U8K and go against the U8N. U7K last year, also an excellent TV. When they were both at their best, they were excellent. When they're at their worst, they can appear a little bit muddy. You don't see that this year on the U8N at all. Very clear in almost all content. Also very good upscaling, not the best in the world, but watching a lot of older films. The reason you're seeing demo material as this next fire piece we move into standard is watching movies, old films with heavy grain structure. 2001, watching a lot of older films, Godfather, things of that nature with the heavy structure. Watching older films that are in 1080p is how I do that. Just can't show those to you on camera due to copyright. Now I do like this next demo for motion. This whale demo from Jen. The motion is very fast transitions. And we're actually still in standard for this one. Looks fantastic. Now we'll also remain in standard for this fire demo. Now, which is more true to life? Unless I ask Jen, I'm not sure what the director's intent is. Same color presets. And I probably prefer the saturation on the U8K in these two shots. Again, Jen's work is amazing. That's what you're seeing through most of this video. Now, I like this blender scene and this food scene is color inaccuracy. You'll see me change the preset. What I'm actually going to do is I'm actually going to enable the dynamic color and see if that's something you'll miss. As I mentioned, or should have mentioned before, that dynamic color isn't available on the U8K. It's a feature I like, very similar to Sony's Live Color and Samsung's Color Boost. You'll see it later in gaming. It's another thing that I would go for the U8N over. Build quality, dynamic color, HDMI eARC being on a different port other than the 2.1 ports, brightness, local dimming, processing. It gives it that little bit of pop. You'll notice it more in gaming later. Leaving it on, then changing the presets, going through them. And see if you like that more. In real content, in terms of not an animation or anything like that, it's pizza. Re-enabling it. But even without that color added, there's just more pop and depth to the U8N. Now we're going to use Spears and Munsell and move into Dolby Vision. You'll see me go through the different Dolby Vision presets, and I'll apologize that while I'm editing, I noticed my camera must have been bumped a little bit, so we're a little turned to the left. I definitely straighten that out when we get to the gaming. But we're here at Dolby Vision. You'll see me go through the different presets within Dolby Vision. Now, Dolby Vision implementation from Hisense is not my favorite, and to me has been a weakness from them in real content and in movies. I would say this year it is improved, especially in films and real content. There is a clarity there where in previous years it just seemed to have a hard time with grain structure in Dolby Vision. Now, why I'm not a big fan of Dolby Vision on any manufacturer is simply because you are limited to your flexibility of customization. Now, for me, the shot that really stands out is this one here, where there's a dullness to the left and a clarity to the right, though they are in the same preset. And switching them on the fly, there's a bit of a haze on the U8K. Very impressed with the local dimming on the U8K. Now, off angle, the U8N is also better. But the way they are set up in my room, in my living room, I wouldn't even be able to get off angle on the U8N anyway, because there's a wall there, and on the U8K, there's no point in showing just one instead of the other. But you can see in Dolby Vision, they actually look quite different, meaning for me, the Dolby Vision implementation is much better this year. More natural, less blown out, more detail, better control. Now again, talking about value, what Hisense is bringing, high-end picture quality for a good value. Now you're looking at the U8N has better picture quality, better processing, much better build quality. Now at launch, TV is relatively new, it's going to be more expensive. Why don't I discuss prices in these videos? Simply because a lot of these videos get seen in 6 months, in a year, and the prices are no longer viable, they're no longer accurate. But the U8K is very affordable right now. But again, unless you're looking for extreme value, the U8N beats it everywhere. Now jumping into game mode, I've also been somebody very critical of Hisense's game mode. Not the best looking game mode as far as I'm concerned. Active contrast is gone, it's grayed out. I'm less concerned about the game bar here, though the game bar on the U8N requires an extra step. You hit menu on the U8K and it enables. The U8N, you have to go into menu and then find it. There may be a shortcut that I haven't discovered yet. Now, what I'm most concerned about here is image quality, how they look, not how they perform. So 144 Hertz boost isn't enabled. I don't have any of that enabled. I'm just going by picture quality alone, and I prefer the U8N by quite a bit. You'll see me go to the game bar here. And also what the U8N has that the U8K does not have is it does have a genre check, or I should say preset within. So once you get past here, you can go down and change the image. It doesn't change a ton, but it's there and it's very welcomed. But I do prefer each preset versus last year's single U8K preset. Now, as far as performance, pixel response, quickness, it all feels very responsive on both. Again, these TVs are fully featured in terms of gaming. Anything you want, they have. But in comparing the two, without equipment that can check input lag, things of that nature, it's all about image quality for me. And very important with mini LEDs, how much of the processing takes a hit in regards to keeping low latency and input lag very low. Now we are on PS5, by the way. Now I'm going to go ahead and turn on the dynamic color enhancer. Again, it's a feature that is only on the U8N. Now I'm sure on the U8K you could change the saturation of the color and blow it out if you like. But in certain games, it's something you may prefer and enjoy. Now, I'd like to see them keep advanced contrast somewhere in there to give it a little bit more pop or change. To me, games need to be fluid in terms of looking accurate, and they can look cartoony if you want them to. But I do prefer the U8N in every shot. So again, not going by the game bar, going by image quality. Turning off the dynamic color. And I still find the U8N to be more colorful. Now on the fly, we'll go back in and change the genre to get them more matched before I move into our next game. And for many of you, having that eARC moved over where it doesn't take the two HDMI 2.1s is a huge plus. I wish other manufacturers would follow suit. Looking here at Tekken 8, they do look more similar in this game. And in terms of the brightness slider on the PS5, as far as going up and down when configuring HDR, they were very similar. The U8N did appear a bit brighter. I kind of went in the middle as to go for both of them. Now, what do you guys think of the gaming? What do you guys think 29 minutes in? For those of you watching this video live, those of you that are part of our community, I love you guys. I appreciate you guys watching these long videos. I leave them long. For me, it's about relaxing and seeing as much of these TVs as you possibly can and getting as much context as you possibly can. The The U8K I've had from launch last year. I still have the U7K as well. Those of you that aren't fans of Hisense, are you willing to give them a shot now? Do you see the value coming up? Do you see mini LEDs on the rise? We're getting to a place where the local dimming is that good. Now on the fly here, I'll also change the color again and see if it's something that you would want to implement and see if it makes a difference that you would notice. Again, flexibility of image in gaming for me, very important. But both look very good in Street Fighter. Now the next game is actually more difficult, and it's Ghost of Tsushima, which looks insane on PC, by the way, but we're going to keep it on PS5. And the reason why I do want to show this title here is it's dark in this specific scene. Now it's meant to be dark, but it does illustrate the difference in brightness. Shadow detail being most important. Now I'll move over to the flames so you can actually see better. But it's not just the brightness of the U8N, it's the local dimming that doesn't crush the detail. Now going back in and removing the color dynamic enhancer. And the point is, the U8N is not bright to the point of washing anything out. And that is the gaming segment of our video. All right, guys, here we are at the end of the video, over 30 minutes. I want to thank you guys for watching, those of you, again, that are watching these live. What are your thoughts on Hisense in general? To me, they've come a very long way, specifically now in processing. The biggest difference between the two, as I've mentioned a few times in the video, is detail, depth, color, peak brightness, local dimming. It is better in every facet. Not to mention better backlit remote, better build quality. Audio is about equal. I'd give the edge to the U8N. It seems to have a bit more bass, but both of them are fantastic. If you're looking for the U8K, I would grab it at the largest size possible. Neither one of these TVs need a soundbar. I'm Brian, this is Tech Therapy. Thank you so much for watching. Please consider liking and subscribing. Have a wonderful evening, have a wonderful day. Take care. Love you guys.
I belong to nobody! It's better burn.